So I just saw Spider-Man Far From Home, and I liked it. Now for some quick context, I was not very big on Spider-Man Homecoming. There was definitely a lot I liked about that film, but overall its main issue was that I just didn't enjoy it. At least I didn't really enjoy the first half. It's a film I definitely recommend, but not one I ever really want to watch ever again. I gave it a 5 out of 10 when I first watched it, and I was kinda tempted to revisit it before I saw this film to compare, but I just don't have the urge to sit through it again. So yeah, that's a 5 out of 10, confirmed, no changes ever, sorry. That being said, I was not really expecting much from Far From Home, but I was at least hoping it would be more entertaining, and it was. Like Homecoming, the film does not get off to the strongest start, and it definitely has some pacing issues, but for the most part I genuinely enjoyed myself. The film was much more effective when it came to comedy, the characters were much more likable, the action was much better here, and especially the CGI was improved. The film was much less visually stale than Homecoming. On the whole, the film is a much better and much more entertaining experience than Homecoming, at least it was for me. This is also my favorite performance from Tom Holland, at least as Spider-Man. This is the first film in the MCU where I felt like his performance didn't really have any low points. I mean, I'm not going to call it Oscar review or anything, but he did a pretty great job regardless. It's here I should know that my favorite aspect of Homecoming was Zendaya, and it's the same here. Her performance was great and her character was very fun to watch, and I'm glad they gave her more of a spotlight here. And considering how many scenes she shares with Holland, I'm glad that they had such great chemistry. Jake Gyllenhaal's performance was good for the most part, but he was easily the weakest link of the cast. I'd be lying if I said there weren't at least a couple of scenes where his performance quality completely dropped. All of the rest of the acting was good, but there was nothing I'd consider all that noteworthy. Unfortunately for this film, probably my least favorite aspect to it is the story. It's not a bad story by any means, but it's definitely weighed down by its worst parts. There's one part of the story that really annoyed me, and it's so predictable that I feel like it's probably offensive for me to do it in spoiler talk, but I'm doing it anyway. If you don't want spoilers for Spider-Man Far From Home, then click the timecode on the screen now. 3, 2, 1, go. Mysterio's a villain. That's it. It's the most predictable thing possible, and they went with it. I'm not even gonna try and be like genuine critic over this one. It just bugs me that they tried to even set up that he's not a villain, and then just went with it anyway. They try and spend the whole film like, oh, he's actually a buddy, he's a nice guy, he's a good guy, yay, yay, yay. But it's so painfully obvious. And it's not even faulted by Jake Gyllenhaal's performance. Like, that's not the issue. The issue is it's so painfully obvious. The writing makes it so painfully obvious. It's not that I have an issue with Mysterio being a villain per se. I have an issue with the fact that they... like, he's a known villain character, and they spent all this effort trying to make him seem like a good guy, but also failing. Also, the scene where the film reveals that Mysterio is a villain is very poorly delivered and is kinda stupid. So basically, Mysterio and Peter Parker decide to go out for a drink, and they both do this with their masks off for some reason. Peter Parker has made it very clear he does not want to be seen in the suit and all of that. Like, they made a special new suit so people don't know it's him, so people don't figure out he's Spider-Man. But I guess he just doesn't care about keeping his identity private anymore. And then one of Mysterio's evil friends, who is pretending to be a waitress, comes by and sees Peter's magical glasses on the floor and picks them up and gives them to Peter. We then get an elongated sequence where Peter decides to give the glasses to Mysterio because he feels he's more deserving of them, and then Peter leaves to go see MJ, and Mysterio reveals that that was his plan all along. But if Peter dropped the glasses, then why did you need to trick him anyway? I mean, sure, it makes sense that he was trying to convince Peter that he was a hero and stuff, but what if Peter just walked away and was like, yeah, I do deserve the glasses, you're right. What were you planning on doing if Peter didn't give you the glasses? If your evil friend just did not give him the glasses back, then you would have had no issues with that area. The scene that follows where Mysterio reveals his real evil backstory was very poorly acted on Jake Gyllenhaal's part. I understand if you want a plot twist villain, but can you at least make it believable? I'm kinda getting sick of predictable plot twist villains, you know. One other issue I did have was the editing. The film is at points very, very noticeably dubbed. Speaking of editing, I should probably note that a lot of the advertising for this film is just flat out not in the movie. The scene currently playing out in slow-mo on the screen is literally nowhere to be found in the film. Some of the jokes were cut short in the film, which honestly benefited them quite a fair bit. Some of the dialogue in the trailers was not in the film, but again, that was kind of beneficial because the dialogue that was cut was not good dialogue.
Keep up the good work, because I am going on vacation.
You know what, the things lost from this movie were not really big losses, so I guess that's a good benefit. I do have other issues with the film. Some of the dialogue could have been better. Again, the film is slow towards the start. The musical score was insanely forgettable. There's a poorly done action sequence on the coach to Prague. And the mid and post credit scenes were oddly awful, but overall I felt like the pros outweighed the cons in this movie. One thing I didn't mention that should be fairly obvious is that the film had great production value and production design. The sets and costumes were all great. On the whole, the film felt like it improved from Homecoming quite a fair bit. The only aspect I'd say that Homecoming did better than Far From Home was actually the villain. To be fair though, that movie had Michael Keaton, so that was obviously going to be hard to beat. Overall, this is definitely one of the better MCU films out there. It definitely has its issues, but on the whole, it's a very well made and entertaining movie. And as someone who has not liked an MCU film in 5 years and has not given an MCU film a score this high in 6 years, this seems like pretty high praise. Even if the story really did suck at times, including some things I didn't even mention because it's not worth going into, I still managed to have a good time with this film, and I definitely would recommend it. So yeah, check it out if you haven't already. I know a lot of you probably will have already seen this film, but yeah, it's definitely worth your time. And I'm giving Spider-Man Far From Home a 7 out of 10. That's the end of this video. Like, share, subscribe. I'm bad at outros, and I'll see you in whatever I do next.